I really did love this show. It had the potential to be one of the greatest long running TV series of all time, which is why it's such a shame they had to go and ruin it. The Walking Dead has about 11 seasons. It's a zombie horror drama starring Andrew Lincoln as Rick Grimes. I actually got put onto this show by a friend of mine. I wasn't too fond of zombie shows and things like that. I'm not going to lie. When I started watching this, I was hooked. Like in the beginning, this show was actually amazing. It started off, as kind of more typical. It was more about survival in the beginning. Every episode was about how they were going to find shelter, how they were going to make sure they didn't get taken out by the zombies, basically. The beginning felt like what a zombie series should be like. The zombies actually had a huge determining factor on how the characters moved throughout the series. Even when it did become more about the people versus the people parts, that was still fine to me. I still love the show, which is why it sucks that I never even finished it, and I don't plan to. But the prison arc, that part was amazing when they brought in that fake villain dude. I forgot his name. The governor was that dude's name. Yeah, around the time they brought in the governor, when they were at the prison, that was probably my favorite part of the series. I mean, I was watching I don't know how many episodes a day. The Walking Dead at that time, if you asked me if it was good, I would have told you it was the best thing on the planet. And Rick, Andrew Lincoln, that dude, his acting in The Walking Dead was actually amazing. Rick is by far my favorite character. He was so cool in the beginning. It felt like he always had a plan. He did always have a plan. The Walking Dead in general is a really rough show in the best way possible. But that's why it's so good. Like, I love it for that. And I don't like what they did to Rick later on. They turned that dude into a scrub. They turned that dude into a scrub. He was a shell of his former self, which was okay. Oh, it was okay. It was a part of the plot. Rick was on top for the longest time. At some point, you've got to fall. But it's the way they did it that I don't like. To me, Rick was him. Still is probably. But The Walking Dead in those beginning parts was really there was a lot of savagery going on. It was peak. But I mean, they dropped the ball later on. Around I want to say season 7. All right, I'm just going to be honest. When Negan got introduced, I think the show actually got way better. I love that character. I love Negan's character. The problem for me was it went on way too long. Like way too long. Negan should have been dealt with way sooner. The fall of The Walking Dead for me was definitely the war arc. It was just way too long. Negan is the reason Rick turned into a scrub, which is okay. Like in a lot of shows, there's going to be a big bad that you have to overcome. That's fine. But why did it last like 2 seasons? Why did they turn Rick into a scrub? That was my goal. But yeah, it felt like they were just dragging it out to me. That's what it felt like to me. In the beginning parts, our main characters, of course, they went through struggles, but they always came out on top. Now, around season 7, when Negan got introduced, and it was very cool to see someone that powerful. And Jeffrey Dean Morgan, I love that dude's acting, the guy that played Negan. But there's no reason it should have taken Rick and everyone else as long as it did to beat this dude. I'm not even lying. I don't even know if they did. I didn't even get that far. They dragged out the war arc for so long. Because like earlier on, the main characters, they would always overcome it. But now with Negan, it's like, dang, can they win? Can they get a single win? They literally they were never winning. It's like, fine, I get it, but it gets to a point. It gets to a point. It really does. I think they should have wrapped up that Negan arc way sooner. I'm pretty sure I checked out around like season 9, but up until that point, it truly was peak. And then they made some spin-offs too. Yeah, there's no way I can watch those. There's no way. I couldn't even get through the first one. Yeah, I do still think up until that point, Walking Dead, at least until season 7, is the really, really good. But after that, it starts to fall off. And I feel like that's the point where they really dropped the ball with the show. For what it did for me in the beginning parts, when I did absolutely love it, I still have to give it like a pretty good rating. But dang, I really wish they would have went a slightly different direction with it. But it is what it is. It's still a good show overall.